There is a kind of intelligence that never announces itself. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't win arguments. It doesn't post its opinions. It sits in the third chair from the end of the table, says almost nothing for 50 minutes, and then asks one question that quietly reorganizes the entire meeting. Nobody writes that down. Nobody credits it. Half the time, the person who did it goes home convinced they contributed nothing. We have been trained to recognize intelligence by its volume. The fast talker, the confident answer, the person who fills the silence first. So we've built a world that rewards the appearance of thinking and mostly overlooks the real thing. If you have ever been called quiet, slow to answer, too serious, hard to read, or if you've watched someone with half your understanding be promoted for sounding certain, this video is about you. These are 9 signs you have quiet intelligence, the type nobody ever notices. Keep a private count as we go. At the end, I'll tell you what your number means. And I want to be honest with you before we start. This video is not going to tell you that being quiet makes you superior. It doesn't. It just makes you invisible. And invisible is not the same thing as ordinary. Someone asks you a direct question, and there is a gap. 2 seconds, sometimes 4. In that gap, you are doing something specific. You're checking whether you actually know the answer, or whether you only recognize the shape of it. You're deciding what they're really asking. You're discarding the first response that arrived, because the first response is almost always someone else's opinion that you absorbed and never examined. To you, that pause is the work. To the room, it looks like hesitation. So people fill it. They finish your sentence. They assume you didn't understand the question. Occasionally, someone explains it again, slower. Here's what I want you to notice. The people who never pause are not thinking faster than you. They are skipping the step you're doing. They're retrieving, and you're reasoning. And retrieval sounds better in a room, while reasoning holds up better over time. You have paid a social price for that pause your whole life. It is still the most valuable half-second in the conversation. In most rooms, questions read as weakness. Answers read as competence. You do the opposite of what's rewarded. When something doesn't make sense, you don't argue with it. You ask a question about it. What would we do if that assumption is wrong? How do we actually know that number? What are we solving for here? You're not being difficult. You're testing whether the structure holds. And you already know something most people in the room don't. The fastest way to find out if someone understands a thing is to ask one gentle question about the layer underneath it. This is a real habit of mind. Researchers call it epistemic curiosity, the drive to close a gap in understanding rather than defend a position inside it. But watch what it costs you. The person who states things confidently gets remembered as smart. You get remembered as thoughtful, which in most workplaces is a compliment, with a ceiling on it. You'll notice you're usually the one who spotted the problem 3 weeks before it arrived, and almost never the one credited with spotting it. You leave a conversation carrying things other people didn't pick up. The number in the report that doesn't reconcile with the one on slide 4. The fact that your friend said, "We're fine," about their relationship, and then changed the subject with a joke. The 2 colleagues who used to arrive together and now don't. You register it immediately. Then, and this is the part that defines you, you say nothing. Because you've learned that naming small things out loud makes people uncomfortable, or makes you sound suspicious, or invites a conversation you didn't want to start. So you file it. You have an enormous private archive of things you noticed and never mentioned. Sometimes weeks later, the thing you noticed turns out to be the center of the whole problem, and you sit in the meeting where it's finally discovered and feel a strange, quiet, useless satisfaction. This isn't a psychic gift. It's high attention combined with low urgency to perform. You're gathering data instead of broadcasting it, which makes you unusually accurate and unusually easy to ignore. Most people defend a position long past the point where they believe it, because reversing looks like losing. You don't do that. You'll hear a better argument, go quiet, and quietly update. No announcement, no admission. 2 weeks later, you're simply operating on the new understanding as if you always were. Psychologists call this intellectual humility, the willingness to hold your beliefs as revisable, and it is one of the strongest known predictors of actual good judgment. Not confidence, not speed. The ability to be wrong on purpose. But because you never narrate the change, nobody sees you doing it. And here's the odd, unfair consequence. The person who argues loudly and refuses to move looks like they have convictions. You look like you don't have any. You have plenty. You just hold them the way a scientist holds a hypothesis, rather than the way a fan holds a team. If you've ever been called wishy-washy by someone who has not updated a single opinion in 15 years, that's what happened there. You spot the error inside the first sentence. You know exactly how to correct it. And you decide it isn't worth it. Not because you're a coward, because you ran the calculation. 20 minutes after entering the room, you are visibly worse. As you follow the format of the meeting, you are only partially present. Then, at 11 o'clock at night, when you're washing up, taking a shower, or walking to the vehicle, the entire solution appears, complete, well-organized, and clear. Under observation, your brain doesn't do its true function. Before it can run, the pressure must be released. Therefore, you are consistently underestimated in any setting that relies on live performance, such as brainstorming sessions, interviews, group conversations, and whiteboard tests. Someone who is better in the room but terrible at the job has most likely taken advantage of you. Nothing about your processing is flawed. It is just batch processed instead of real time. Asking for the agenda in advance is a simple yet effective solution. Say, "Let me come back to you on that," without expressing regret. Write a follow-up note that reflects your true thoughts. You don't have to get quick. You need one channel where it doesn't matter how slowly you respond. When someone asks you what you do or how something operates, you avoid using technical terms. The smallest real version is what you aim for. You make an analogy from everyday life. You omit the details that are not yet relevant. You keep an eye on their face, and as it changes, you may identify the missing piece and fill it in precisely. This is the most convincing outward proof of actual comprehension. When people's understanding of something is formed more like a definition than a model, they conceal it behind jargon. You own it if you can compress it without shattering it. Additionally, you receive very little credit for it. Easy explanations seem easy. People sometimes assume that you are simple and that the issue is easy. The 4 individuals who now truly comprehend the concept will be able to do so because of you, while you'll watch someone explain the identical concept in complex, impressive language and be regarded as the expert in the room. Continue doing it nevertheless. In any technical subject, the rarest kind of generosity is clarity. At work, most people are physically unable to pronounce these 3 words. You speak them with ease. As a barrier, not as a shrug. I don't know, but here's how I'd find out. I'm not familiar with that aspect. This section is familiar to me. This is only feasible if you don't put too much emphasis on being smart. And when you do state you're certain, it signifies something, which makes you far more trustworthy than someone who fills every void with a confident assumption. There is a well-established tendency here. People tend to overestimate their understanding of an area the less they understand it. Strangely, having a better understanding of the boundaries of your own knowledge comes with competence. You become more honest as you get more knowledge because the unknown becomes larger. But the price is real. I don't know is seen as a lack of competence, rather than the existence of it in an environment that values certainty. You don't lack confidence. You've been adjusted. Very few are, and very few are aware of it. The final one is the one that connects everything else. When someone has determined that you are not the most intelligent person in the room, you can tell. You can sense the very instant they classify you as innocuous, calm, and junior. You also don't fix it. In part because fixing it takes a lot of energy. In part because you've discovered something actually helpful. When people believe you're not really following, they reveal you a lot more of themselves. Thus, you left it alone. You observe. While people have a false perception of you, you receive an accurate image of everyone. Occasionally, it becomes evident very quickly that you have a greater understanding of the entire scenario than anybody else. You get to savor this for about 4 seconds before returning to your silence. But this is where I want to put you to the test. It feels good to be undervalued. It's not dangerous. Additionally, because you didn't bring your own facts to the table, individuals with poorer information than you make decisions that affect your business, your team, and your finances. Being invisible is not a sign of humility. Sometimes it's simply simpler. There is only one flaw with quiet intellect, and it isn't thinking. The transmission is the problem. You haven't optimized at all for getting heard, only for being correct. Furthermore, a right decision that stays in your mind is just as valuable in the actual world as making no decision at all. You don't have to raise your voice. The skill isn't loud. The trick is to choose your one moment every meeting, the one statement that counts, and to express it clearly, early, and without softening it into a question. Just one phrase. It is not a personality transplant. That's the entire difference between being subtly correct and being helpful. So, your phone number. 2 or 3. You have a thinking streak that manifests when the circumstances are appropriate, generally one-on-one and with individuals you can trust. This is how you're made, from 4 to 6. In most of the rooms you sit in, you are probably the most accurate and least credited individual. 7 or more. Before I finished the first sign, you were aware of the topic of this video. You've been told you're quiet your whole life, but in reality, you were always checking. You are not superior to the quick talkers because of any of this. It simply implies that those who only had one instrument used the incorrect one to measure you. Just the number that seems to be written about you should be included in the comments. Many individuals down there have experienced the same thing, but they have never given it a name. Instead, than attempting to explain things to someone who is the silent person in every room, email them this: "I'm happy you're still here. Look for yourself."